Welcome. I'm just going to record as I work. I am starting a new project with Nuxt, and in this video I'm going to set up a virtual machine in my Windows computer using the Windows subsystem for Linux so that I can have an Ubuntu instance where I could do all of the development work for this Nuxt project. And let's get started. The Ubuntu machine that I want to create will have Git and curl. It will have asdf, so that I can use that to manage the tools I use in the environment. So for example, I can have multiple versions of Node running on the same computer, and asdf will manage that. It's really nice. You can set up the tools that you want to use, and then those tools just cascade through an entire folder system. And so another folder with another set of tools where those tools cascade. So if you're using Java development, you can have all your Java projects over here. Node, you can have all your Node projects over here and have completely different tools on the same OS. I will use nodejs, which as you install it, it includes npm, but then I will also install pnpm so that I can use that instead of yarn or instead of npm. It's kind of an experiment. I'm learning about pnpm and I'm starting to like it. We'll also install direnv, which is a tool that can help me manage environment variables. So rather than have a .env file in my builds, I can have a file in a folder on my system, and then the environment variables just cascade through all the subfolders. Very easy way to separate your environment variables from your code. There's no risk of accidentally submitting your environment variables into a repository and then having to deal with git ignore and go through the history and delete your git cache and all that. I will also install GitHub auth so that, and then I'll create an SSH key so I can access private Git repositories from within my virtual machine. Nuxt will be installed so that I can then create our first Nuxt project as a pnpm workspace, by the way. So, I mean, the architecture I've explained in another video, watch for that over here or something. And I want a new virtual machine where I can isolate this work from everything else that I've been doing and isolate it from other projects that I'm working on. So the first step is to install Ubuntu in the Windows subsystem for Linux. So to do this, notice that I can go to my PowerShell and say WSL list, and I'll just say verbose. I have 4 virtual machines running, currently 2 of them related to Docker Desktop and the other are Ubuntu instances. I didn't know when I created those Ubuntu instances, I didn't know some of the limits of the WSL. I want a named instance. I want something that says project X, so that I can then go in here and say open up project X. And if I were to try it right now to create, if I were to say install a new Ubuntu 2404, you'll notice I already have a distribution with that name. So WSL will tell me I can't install that, but I will open the existing one that you already have. I don't want that. I don't want the existing VM with other project work in it. I want a new VM with that version, Ubuntu 2404. That's the most recent LTS version. I want another VM running that. I just have to do a little workaround. So I've discovered how I will do that. I will install a new Ubuntu VM using, well, I could do this 2 ways. I could just simply check, here are the list of distributions available online, and I could say install Ubuntu. And I believe that will default to the most recent LTS version, which happens to be 2404, but it'll be installed in my system as a name Ubuntu, not one of the names that already exists on my system. And so I need to avoid this collision somehow. Also note that I could go to the Microsoft Store and I could search for Ubuntu and I could install the Ubuntu app this way. Pretty cool. Oh, look at this. I can't install it. I have to open the existing one. That's interesting. Let's see what happens. So on your system, if you don't already have an Ubuntu, you could go to the Microsoft Store and just install it from here. It's very handy. It shows up as an app on your system, and then you could double click that and open it up, and voila, you're in a Ubuntu virtual machine. Very cool. But let me do it this way. I'm going to just see if I can install Ubuntu and see what happens. It says I'm already installed. It's launching the existing one. Oh, shucks. It's not what I want. It looks like it did create a new VM, so it didn't have to install a new distribution. Let's go through this process. No, well, I'll say my new Unix username is David. Let's just get to the prompt, and then we'll see what we've got. New password, retype my password, and we're successful. And now we're at the prompt, so let's get back to the PowerShell for a minute. I'll say exit this, so back at PowerShell, and if I list, so I have, oh, look at that. So I have a running instance of Ubuntu with a unique name. Now this is great. This is where I wanted to get to this point, where I have a fresh install of Ubuntu. Let's get into that Ubuntu and find out what version it is. So I'll say Ubuntu. So I'm using WSL to open a distribution with a name of Ubuntu. It's already running. There we go. And oh, I'm somehow browsing my, I've mounted my Windows computer. There we go. Now I'm at the root of the Linux system. Let's find out, how do I, let's go to ChatGPT. How to ask Ubuntu its current version. All right, so what does it say? In bash lsb release -a, and I'm running 24.04.1 LTS. That's great. Code name Noble. Got it. This is exactly what I wanted, but I don't want to use this VM. So here's where it gets kind of interesting. Let's say you wanted to have multiple Ubuntu 24.04 instances on your computer. I want to use this Ubuntu for that client and a different Ubuntu VM for a totally different client, and keep all their code bases totally isolated from each other, all the environment variables totally isolated, different tools, etc. The Windows subsystem for Linux does not make it easy to have multiple instances of the same Ubuntu version. You have to do this little trick. So the trick is, I'm going to shut down this VM, export it to a file, and then import it with a new name. And I believe that once I've exported it, I can import this thing as new names multiple times. And I'm always starting with the same base image. Let's work on that now. All right, so how do I shut down? Let's say exit that, list this. I'm running the Ubuntu version. WSL, let's say help. I believe we're looking for export. So I can export the distribution to a file name. It exports the distribution to a tar file. The file name can be dash for standard out. Oh, right. VHD specifies the distribution should be exported to as a VHDX file. I don't need that. So I'm going to follow this example here with no options. I'll just export it to a tar file. Dash export distribution to a file name. Let's go dash we'll export the Ubuntu distribution, and we'll say Ubuntu 24.04 Noble. Which version was it? Way back here. Okay. .1 LTS Noble. Export in progress. And then I'm going to import this distribution but with a new name. And then I hope it works, because then I can have another import with a different name, and I hope that that works too. Let's check that out. So if I list, right, good. Let's WSL import, and we'll go Ubuntu, no, I'll say project 75, but I'm going to, so that'll be the name, the custom name of my distribution, but I will build this computer, this virtual computer, based on the one that we just exported. So ubuntu.24.04.1-lts-noble. See what happens. Oop, that didn't work. Maybe I need a location. Let's look at the import in place. Import, install location, imports the specified tar file as a new distribution. So this is what I thought I would do, and that's what I thought that I did. But I didn't create an install location. So let's give it an install location. There should be a default location. I'll see if I can say project 75. So the distribution name and my folder name, let's say, is the same. This folder name, I hope, will just show up in the default area. It's like in the apps, data, roaming, such and such, if that works. So import in progress. This might take a few minutes. Now if I list, and I have a new one called Project 75. Let's see if I can open it up. See Project 75. Looking good so far. I'm at the root. Interesting. Not sure why I'm browsing the root of my... There we are. So this PowerShell, what I need is a bash window. How do I do that? I thought that that's what would happen. So I'll exit that, and I'm going to say WSL D. I'm already there. Exit that. How do I get to a bash window? Open up Visual Studio Code at that location. Look at that. I'm looking at the, that's not what I want. Well, let's see if I can just open bash. Right, so I'm looking at my Microsoft Windows system with, oh, and it looks like Project 75 was installed there. We'll see more about that later. WSL list repos. They're all stopped at the moment. Let's go WSL D Project 75. How to open / run one of the instances. That's not what I expect, because if I say WSL D and I'll go to Ubuntu, I get a totally different experience here. Right, why am I using this as root? So I have a list of my virtual machines here, and I understand that I can say WSL open a distribution of called Project 75. And I also want to enter as a particular user, and I believe the way to do that is just say you, David. That's my username. I hope that this will bring me to a command prompt that is my user and into the home directory of my user. And that looks like it worked. So how do I say home? I don't know how to get up multiple directories. Home, David, there. Is that how to do it? There must be a faster way to do that. Please tell me in the comments. How do I get from / this folder all the way back to my home directory in Unix? There's got to be, I'm sure there's an easy way. And all you Unix guys are like, it's just blah, blah, blah. And well, it's not obvious. It's actually not obvious on Windows either. So there's that. So it looks like we have a totally new working Ubuntu VM with a custom name. And remember, I can go back to the other window here and say, let's do the same thing, but call it Project 76. And I believe we will have a totally new Ubuntu computer, totally separate with a new name, but using the same Ubuntu version. So now let's say list all of them. There we go. And there's Project 75 and there's Project 76. One of them is running, right? Of course, in the other window, one of them is running and the other one is stopped. So isn't that lovely? So let's unregister, because I just want to clean that up. Unregister, this means delete. Project 76, just get rid of it. Now if I list, there's no Project 76. That's wonderful. Now in my head, I have to remember that this Ubuntu right here is just an empty. It's just a fresh install, empty. And but it's also a 24.0. Like this Ubuntu 24.04, I installed that and started building stuff inside of it. So it's got clutter in there. It's got projects. It has repos. I don't want to use that currently. I want to build something from a fresh install of Ubuntu, and we've now done that. We have a fresh install. Let's clear this up. I'll exit my PowerShell, and the next thing we're going to do is let's get back to our list. So we need to install git and curl. Let's do a sudo apt update on this. If I typed my password correctly, there we go. So now we have an updated version of Ubuntu Noble. We can confirm that Git is installed and curl is installed. Good, so those are both installed. Let's configure the system for Git. So I'll say git config global user.name, and I'll say David subin. And git config -global user.email and my email address. Oops, I don't know what happened. There we go. Next thing I will do is install asdf so that I can manage tools across tools that will cascade through entire subfolder systems. And the way to do that is to git clone. Well, let's check for the latest version, actually. Let's go online, check for the latest version of asdf. Latest version. No, here we go. .04.1 looks that way. And so I'm going to git clone this repository into a folder called .asdf branch 0.14.1. cloning now. And then to tell my system to actually use ASDF, we're going to do a little edit to our bash rc file. So let's go nano. And I've done this before. That's why on the left-hand side, I have this routine that I've done on multiple VMs. So I'm just following my own README because there's a lot of detail here and I don't want to forget. So let's jump into bash rsc for a moment. And at the end, I'm going to use these lines right here, copy those lines. So tell the system to say, hey, in the home directory, you'll find asdf.sh and completions asdf.bash. And now I can put a new line at the end and we'll exit that and say, yes, modify the buffer. And there we go. Then we will install the node plugin for ASDF. This is where ASDF becomes really powerful because I can have the node plugin then allows me to install multiple versions of node, and then I can tell a folder to say, I want this version of node to cascade through all these other subfolders. So let's do that here. There's the ASDF command not found. That's funny. Maybe I need a new terminal. Let's say exit, and then we'll bash command not found. Oh, I'm not in the VM. WSL D project 75. Forgot to go in as a user. You, David. Good. So ASDF plugin added the node plugin. ASDF add the node plugin and use this Git repository. So now that we have node plugin installed, I can ask ASDF to list all the node versions. There we go. I want to install the most recent. So we'll go ASDF install nodejs 23.0. Cool. Warning is irrelevant. It's just saying that ASDF is configured by default to actually preserve the downloaded files, but the current plugin does not support that. So I don't need to preserve this downloaded file. Thank you for the warning, but it's not relevant. The next thing we need to do is tell my system to tell ASDF to use this version of node through a folder system. Now, you could do this at any location and it will cascade through the subfolders. You can even override it. You can say, in this subfolder, I want 23.0 node to work in all these folders, but at this folder, I want to change it to a different 22.2, and then that will cascade. So this is the wonderful reason for ASDF. What I'm going to do is just say at the home level, use this version of node, and that will cascade through all the folders that I create at the home level. To do this, I'll say nano home.tool.versions. Now this file doesn't exist, but nano will now create that file at this location. It's empty. I'll say nodejs, and what version did we do? 23.0.0, right? Exit, yes, enter, 23.0.0. Let's confirm that node is installed correctly. So to do that, I'll say, node version 23.0.0. Lovely. And I can also confirm that npm is installed, npm version 10.9.0. Lovely. Now, for convenience, I'm going to, we haven't installed pnpm yet, so I'll come back to this later. I'll make an alias later for that, but in the meantime, let's go to the next step. Install the direnv plugin for ASDF and install the direnv version. So let's go ASDF plugin, add direnv. Okay, good. ASDF direnv setup shell bash and version latest. So this will just tell direnv to default to the bash shell and use the latest version always. And there we have it. I'm going to tell ASDF which direnv version to use. And again, I'll do this at the home level for everything that, all the subfolders below the home level. I could override this at any subfolder, but I'll just say at the home level in the tool versions. Remember, we just created this file a moment ago. Now I'm going to add direnv, the actual version of direnv. I don't know the actual version. So hold on, let's get back out of here. Exit, we don't need to modify the buffer. I'll say direnv-v. And we now know it's 2.35.0, 2.35.0. Now let's get back into our file, nano home.tool versions, and I'll add direnv 2.35.0. new line, yes, save the buffer, close, and we're good to go there. Let's add some environment variables. And to do this, I can create a .envrc file anywhere on the file system, and the environment variable will then cascade through all the subfolders of that folder. Let's do it at the home level for now. Again, we'll say nano home. Now I'm creating a new file here called envrc, and it's empty. And I'll say inside that folder, I'll say use asdf. And now I don't know why we have to do that. I think that's just asdf setup. I did it long ago, and so I just copy that line and say, yep, use asdf in this environment from the home level down. But also, let's just export my variable value. And we'll see, well, the date, I'll say the date is 2024-26 for now. And I'll show you how that works. So we have that environment variable now. I'll say direnv, that's not what I expected. Oh, direnv allow. So this allows the environment variables, environment not found. Oh, we'll come back to that. Oh, because I'm not in that folder. CD root. There we go. Root list A, and then we should have an ASDF folder. We've got a tool versions file and an envrc file. So I'll say direnv allow here, and there we go. It's how do we now print echo? How do we echo? Do we echo the environment variable? Echo my variable? Is that what I called it? Not sure. How to print an environment variable to the terminal window. It doesn't have a value. Why not? Home, right? Because that's not the home. All right, so let's cd into my home, and we'll nano envrc, and it's there. Export my underscore variable. Let's just make it simpler. Value. My underscore value. Exit. Yes, save the buffer. And now direnv allow. There must be something I'm missing, and I'll come back to it. Maybe use asdf isn't happening yet. So let's exit this terminal window, go to bash again. I will WSL list. So WSL user David, CD to my home. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So what happened is, so I had to, just this one time, I had to enter the VM fresh so that the new environment variable called use ASDF is enacted. Now that it is enacted, I can use direnv to manage my environment variables. And so now if I say echo my underscore variable, we should have my value. There it is. Now watch this. So nano, this is where it gets really cool. Nano.envrc, I'm going to say my new value. So I'm changing an environment variable. It tells me now, direnv is telling me that, hey, something has changed here. .envrc is blocked. Run direnv allow to approve its content. Ooh, my environment, it's a security mechanism that my environment variables now cannot be changed without my awareness. So I'm aware that I've changed this environment variable. I'm going to say direnv allow, and it will renew the environment variables. There we go. And now if I say echo my variable, it'll say my new value. Isn't that cool? So I didn't have to, this time, didn't have to close my terminal and reopen and refresh the environment, and it's just there. It's just working. It's just awesome. So let's now move on to the next step, which is to create, to install auth for GitHub. I'm just going to follow these instructions because the version changes from time to time. So here we go. I'm going to install on Ubuntu Linux. There we go, the official source. I have to grab this line of code and ta-da, enter password. When that's done, there we are. I'm going to, and I've already sudo apt update recently. So now I'll just sudo apt install gh, which is GitHub. There it is. That part is now done. We will now configure the GitHub auth CLI, make a new SSH key to auth with GitHub for submodules. Copy this. So that was to check my current SSH keys, and I have none. Let's make a new one. I'll say enter the file to which to save the key. I'll just say default, enter a passphrase, empty for no passphrase, enter the same passphrase again. Now the SSH key has been created, I will start, hold on, let's start the SSH agent if it's not already running. I actually don't know how to check if it's not already running, but I'll do this little step anyways. Oop. Copy, paste. Why can't I paste? Dollar, parentheses, SSH agent start. There we go. So our SSH agent now has a PID, which is a process ID. And I'll add the new key to the RS to the agent. Let's copy this. Identity has been added. Confirm that the new key is in the list. ls-al, all the list at .ssh, and there we now have a list of keys. And the .ssh folder exists. I'm going to grab the contents of the RSA pub file. So this is kind of weird. The easiest way for me to do this is to pop open code, and then I'm going to go grab that. And I'm not going to show this on the screen, obviously. I'll obfuscate it somehow. Notice the first time I launch code, VS Code, right? Visual Studio Code at this prompt, it does the necessary work of installing the code bits within the Ubuntu VM, so that now I'm running VS Code, and it looks like a Windows app, which is lovely, but it's actually running inside of the VM. So yes, I'm going to trust the authors of all the files in the parent folder of home. Yes, and notice down in the bottom left, this is a WSL instance of Visual Studio Code, and it's inside Project 75, and now I can browse the entire file system, and I'm going to go to the SSH and go get my pub, the contents of the pub file, and then I'll navigate to here and add this to my GitHub account. So let's go to the GitHub account right now, here, new SSH key, and paste in the contents of that key, and I'll say this is my Project 75 Ubuntu key. Add the SSH key. Now I have this interesting choice where I can continue in my bash window or in the Visual Studio Code window. I can pop open a terminal here and have access in the same way that I would to the file system through bash. There we go. Oh, that's interesting. It started as a root. I'll change that. So there's a way that I can default the system to a user, and I will look into that. I don't want to open the VM as a root. I don't know why it defaults to that. Maybe it's the way that I copied the, I exported the system and imported it with a new name, and I bypassed the standards. But nonetheless, let's continue in the bash window. Next thing we need to do is prepare the nuxi CLI. So I'm going to use, well, actually, I want to install pnpm. Let's install pnpm first, and then we'll use pnpm from now on to do things like install modules. And to do that, let's see, I do not have that instruction. So pnpm io installation. I have the prerequisites on POSIX systems using CorePack. I wonder if I have, so if CorePack is coming by default, pnpm. CorePack is about to download the pnpm version. Do I want to continue? Let's just not bother. I don't know why CorePack is, why don't I just do it, install globally pnpm. That seems more familiar. I don't know what benefit CorePack would have in this case, except that in this case, the file already exists. Oh, in this case, the pnpm file already exists. Well, maybe I have to use CorePack because for some reason, this folder already exists, and then using npm, there's a conflict. Anyway, let's see if CorePack can succeed in this case. It can. Look at that. So that's funny. So pnpm does respond now. It tells me its version. That means it's successfully installed. Now let's go back to install the nuxi client. So I'm going to say pnpm add global -- global nx latest. That's the nuxi CLI. I'm able to find the global bin directory. So pnpm setup, apparently I have to do that. And so the next configurations were made. It exported an environment variable for the pnpm, had added to the path to start using pnpm run this source /home/david/.bashrc. Now if I say pnpm add global, and it works, cool. Now I guess nuxi version, man not found, nx version. So I don't want, why do I have nx? I have a feeling I don't want nx. I want nuxi. So nuxi. Nuxt version, and it's working. So we have nuxi now. I don't know what nx is. This is confusing to me. But when I search for how to install nuxi globally, I get information about how to install nx, and it's confusing. I think it's maybe an alternate CLI that somebody created, or it's totally unrelated, and the internet is the internet. Right. So what am I doing next? What I'm doing next is to... All right. So we're now at this moment where I need to make some decisions about folder structure. So I have WSL with asdf, pnpm, nodejs, direnv, and Nuxt hub. Now I want a folder for my Nuxt projects. Well, I'll just use the home for that. So I'm already here. I'm in the home. And I want to have two different workspaces with two completely different sets of environment variables. So let's say, how do I create a directory? Make a directory called Nuxt Project 75. Nuxt apps. Let's cd into there, and I'll say a new folder. You know what? I want to do this in code so it's a little more visual. So I want to do this. I don't want to be running it as a root. I'll say su-David. There we go. So now I'm running as David, and in my terminal window, let's zoom in a little bit. So notice I have my tool versions here, my environment RC. I don't actually need this anymore. That was just for example. My bash RC. And actually, I wanted to create a new, now that I have pnpm installed, I want to make a new alias. How do I do that? So I can shorten and save myself some pain. There we go. So the end of my bash RC file, I will say, whenever I type the letter P, it actually means pnpm run. New line, save that, and direnv allow. So that's reloaded, exported the path again. We're up to date. So now if I say P, that's, why is pnpm not found? There we go. So P is now working. I had to, I guess, log in again as David, and now it's all working. So clear that for now. Inside my Nuxt apps, this is where I need to be careful about the new architecture. So I want to have a new folder here called range and a new folder called employment.link. And inside each of those, well, and we're going to have a third. Let's say this might be a folder where I also work on Nuxt layers separately. So be like my Nuxt auth layer. And that'll be a Nuxt app all by itself, but then one that I can use elsewhere. But I'll do that later. Delete that permanently. So inside the employment link, I want to initiate this as a pnpm workspace. And how do I do that? How to use pnpm to create workspace. I wonder if there's like an init routine for that. So I guess I'll say pnpm init. So it created a, oh, I didn't want that. I'm in the wrong, let's delete that permanently. I'm in the wrong folder. Let's cd into Nuxt apps employment link. Now I'll go pnpm init, permission denied. Open, permission denied. So I'm running into a permissions issue. I'm not sure why, but the folders under my home folder may not have had appropriate permissions to run pnpm init. Let's try it now, and still not working. So let's try, make sure that this is recursive. So for all of the folders under David, I want this user to own now pnpm init. And it worked. Okay, so it was just a permissions issue. I'll have to discover why that is. And here we go. So I now have inside of the employment link folder a package JSON where I can indicate to pnpm that this is a workspace. So here's how this is going to work. Inside this workspace, I want to have a folder for the site, like the actual website, the Nuxt website. And also, I will have other layers, Nuxt apps that I will inject as layers and include. So for example, one of them will be auth, all right? My auth Nuxt layer. Or I'm not sure auth, maybe I'll use the auth module, but content layer or something like that. Nonetheless, let's remove this, delete this permanently, and inside the, let's look at the code for describing. So this will be employment link workspace version. I'm not in production yet, so I'll say version.o. Don't need main. I don't need any scripts here. I don't need a keyword or author or a license. I just need to tell the system that this is private, true, and that it is a workspace. There we go. An array of workspaces. So the first one will be site. I don't know what to call it yet. Let's call it Apex. There we go. So inside here, there will be an Apex thing, and I'm going to create that as a Nuxt app, and we'll do that in a moment here. So I'm going to copy this because I'm building two different projects, and they'll have almost identical structure. So let's just copy and paste this package JSON, but this time I'll call it the range workspace, and it also has an Apex. Cool. I will eventually want a scripts block in here as well, but I'll do that later. So now I guess I'll say pnpm install, and because I didn't already define a package manager, I believe it added that detail to my package JSON, and it added a pnpm lock file. Let's do the same in range pnpm install. Permission denied. Why is that? Okay, let's delete this permanently. I'll say pnpm init. All right, so now I can copy and paste this. The file had to be created with the appropriate permissions. I'm still having this permissions issue. I'll solve that next. Range workspace with a package manager, pnpm install. There we go, already up to date. So I have two pnpm workspaces in my new virtual machine. The next task will be to create a Nuxi app, but I want to do that with, I want to solve this permissions issue before I go any further. And so to do that, let's just close what I've got here and go find out how to solve that problem. How to open a WSL Ubuntu instance default to a specific user. Let's follow that instruction. Bash. I could have done this inside the Visual Studio Code window, but I won't. So let's open the project 75. So WSL-D project 75. Now let's go cd home, and we're at the home directory of the root. Where's the etc folder? I don't see it anywhere. Let's try sudo nano et wsl conf system true, system D true, and under user default equals David. WSL shutdown. Exit now. WSL shutdown. Cool. A list. Now if I open this distribution, let's hope that I'm at, so I'm David by default. That is good news. Lovely. So now I should be able to use Nuxi to produce an app inside the workspace. Let's do that next. And to do that, there's this incredible YouTube video. Special thanks to this guy.
Collaboration is key for team success. With ClickUp, you can easily manage your team's tasks and timelines in one app. Using our Gantt chart feature, you can map out your team's tasks and set dependencies to ensure everyone is on the same page.
Hey, welcome to the channel. Let's talk.
So special thanks to Coding with Martin YouTube channel, because he put together this very useful little tip to create Nuxt apps, Nuxt layers compatible with version 4, Nuxt version 4. And so let me fast forward to that line. So while I'm here, I'm going to subscribe. Thank you, Coding with Martin. I'll subscribe to your wonderful channel. I've seen your video a dozen times because I always need this line right here.
And what does
this line? So inside my, let's cd into the range. And so you'll notice I have, here, let me zoom in a bit. Well, that didn't zoom the way I wanted it to. Zoom in a bit. Nuxi, is there a version? Nuxi is working, excellent. Nuxi, Nuxi, just like he says here, init with this tag v4-compat. And what I'm going to call this the apex, the range apex. Which package manager I'd like to use? pnpm. And this is creating a Nuxt app with the folder system, the file structure of version 4, Nuxt version 4. And you'll notice it's doing the necessary preparations. Am I interested in participating? Not right now. I'm not interested in participating in data collection. Yes, initialize a Git repository. And now let's jump in here and see what happened. Let's have a range apex. Let's cd into the range apex. And I have a bunch of folders. So I have the range apex. And there's my app. App.view. Everything is configured. Package.json is pretty basic with some scripts here. The latest version of Vue and Nuxt. I want to lock my version to this for now. And yes, why don't I, while I'm here, install, see, this is very helpful. Windows Subsystem for Linux knows that this is a fresh install of VS Code related to that instance. So it's asking if I want to install various extensions, which is lovely because now notice that Visual Studio Code and the configuration of it can be unique to that Ubuntu VM. The extensions in here are unique to, here's what I need for that VM. I don't need all the extensions for Java. I don't need all the extensions for Svelte or React. I just need here Vue because I'm using Nuxt. And so let's install that. Sure. While I'm here, thank you for the reminder. Because I changed the Nuxt version from this to just this, I will run pnpm install. And then while I'm here, let's see if my alias works. I want to run pnpm run dev. I should be able to just say pdev and everything shall open. And here we are browsing the Nuxt app on my local host, 3000. There it is. Let's do that one more time in my other project. And just to confirm that I am browsing this particular, I'll say, I'm going to remove the Nuxt welcome and say, let's see, hello. There we go. This is hello from the range. Awesome. In my terminal now, I'm going to clear that out. I'm going to go cd up to here and down back into the employment. Oh, I have to go cd up one more time. Now I'm in the employment link area, which is here, and I'm going to run the same nuxi command. So there it is, but I'm going to call it employment link apex pnpm. Yes, initialize a Git repository, and let's go have a look at this app. And in here, I'll say, I don't know why that didn't autocomplete. Hello from employment link. All right, over here, I should be able to say cd into employment link apex and dev. Oh, pdev. Shoot, pdev. It's starting the local host, and it's over on the left-hand side, building the Nuxt app. Hello from employment link. We have one virtual system running 2 pnpm workspaces. In each workspace, we have a new Nuxt app, version 4 compatibility. That was the goal. It's been, I don't know how long. We hit, I don't know how many bumps along the road. There we are. Thanks for watching.